Hello everyone, and what's the crack? Today I want to look at the generic editing views. So we're talking here CreateView, UpdateView, and DeleteView. So this is the mess that I built for us for today. It's a similar kind of approach as the last time when I was kind of like, I'm going to write the code first and then go through it after. And also I made some silly things in here. And I hope this way you'll see that, okay, we have actually a full control over everything that we might need, at least at basic up to intermediate level. So let's start with the create view. This one is the one that is slightly different than the two others. So update and delete are pretty much the same in terms of the methods that I'm going to use. So let's start with the first line here. Before this line was actually used by us, so we just said, hey, form class will be this income form that I created before. Obviously, following the pattern that you probably noticed the last time, there's something, whenever there is an attribute, there is usually a method that is like get whatever, the name, and that's where we can make some more complicated calculations. The main difference is the fact that in here, we can't really use self. So if we want to get self request or self something using the method, we actually can tap into self. So that gives us a lot of possibilities. But anyway, so in here, I built this funny get form class. So if I in get request, so request get, if there's something like default, then build this. So first we need to specify the fields, as you might remember at the beginning before we built this class here, the form class. What I did was I said, hey, these are the fields, and it was generated, the form was generated automatically. This is more specific. I also specified the fields inside of that form, but in this get form class, I decided to do something like this. If there is something like default in the URL, go with the default, kind of just take value, date, and type fields, and then do whatever you usually do without using the income form. If there is no default, let's go with the income form. So let's see how it works. Let's go to create an income. So now you can see, and don't mind this, I'm going to get to this in a second, and the same with this and this. So now we can see our form. That's the class that we built. We have the date picker, nice date picker, and it's so it is our income form. So let's go and say question mark default, enter. And what happens is we don't have the nice date. Now it's a string again. And also we only have value, date, and type. So the rest of the fields are not there because that's what we specified here. So you can see how this might be used. So if you see a use for this, this is how you get kind of, hey, if you want to approach your forms in a different way, it can be done in one class. We can handle different form classes. Okay, next one is the template name. So it's the standard stuff. That's the default here. This is the app name. This is the model name, income, and then form is by default added to the name. So if I took that out, so I just comment it out and refresh, it's still here. So, and I'm going to take the default out, enter. So it's still here. So that template was loaded, although I did comment this out because this is default. Like if I change that, if I go and do form 2 and now go and try to refresh, it should crash, and it did because we don't have form 2 and I shouldn't be messing with this. What if I wanted to use template name suffix? So let's say I want to make it income underscore create underscore form. Can I do that? So let's see if it works and refresh. And no, there is no income create form. So this is how you specify what this suffix is supposed to be. Okay, I'm going to comment this out and leave it here as default. Let's go down to extra context. Exactly the same stuff as with the list view and detail view. We have our extra context, which is just a dictionary where we can add multiple key value pairs. In here I put dupa, which is Polish word, and blada is also Polish word, and we say dupa blada sometimes when we want to say something like, oh, that's too bad or something. You can add more if you want to be like, hey, I want to also add hello world. That also works. Of course, you can do something like, hey, additional stuff and tap into some model. It doesn't have to be the same model. If you change this to outcome as well, if you add outcome here and scroll down to income, create context, and in here I say, hey, also give me all the outcomes because I want to use it in my template too. So I want to have incomes and outcomes whenever I create new income, which kind of makes sense. You want to say, maybe you want to create a table where you say, here are all of your incomes, here are all of your outcomes, and you want to add that to your template. Okay, and in here is the method. So again, you can add some context using self, so you have a little bit more information. You have all the keyword arguments, so whatever is in them, you can tap into them, and that's the main difference between. And also, if you need to do some calculation here, and that's the main. This is more powerful version of this. Basically, it's always the same story. Okay, so what do we see on our page? Let me refresh. And we have Blada and we have rules because we added Dupa Blada, and then we have Marek rules. And if we go to our template, which is here, and that's a pretty cool trick here, I'm going to hold command and click on this, and it took me straight to this template. And here is Dupa and here is Marek. So I am displaying those two context thingies. Okay, and you can see it here, Blada rules. Okay, and so I'm gonna delete this because I don't need that in my life anymore. And I'm gonna just delete that, okay? And go back to our code in Python. So get is when you are doing the get request. So when you open the create page, it's the get request. When you go here, when I click on this button, I'm in get method. That's how you get the form, the HTML code that is being displayed here. And then when I put in some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in here, and then create some stuff in here and submit, now I posted that information to Django, to Python, to put that into my database. Form was valid, and you'll see why I'm saying this in a second. So let's go back. So that's where you see this message here. That's why we see the get method and post method. You can do whatever you want in here. I put some silly logic here so we can, you can see that you can tap into self and then do something with it if you want. If I go to add income, and in here I do something like, hey, question mark Marek is ABCD, enter, you see, oh, there's something new because I put that logic there. Marek URL argument has been set to ABCD. And you can see it here, hey, if there's Marek in get request, then tell me what that is in a message. If I take it out, you will see that there is no message at all because that wasn't true. So whatever logic you want to add whenever we do the get request, post request, that's where you do it. And you need to specify, you have to pass the request, args and quarks in both post and get. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that. You keep it if you want, just comment it out. I do that at the beginning when I was, learning. I didn't know where to look for stuff. Whatever I found anywhere, I just kept it commented out. So I could just go back to my code, be like, yeah, I know I used it here. Let me see how it looks. It's so much easier to find stuff that way. So you go ahead and leave it. Okay, form valid and form invalid. So form valid is, and you could see that form was valid, is when obviously everything went right. I put all the information required. And by the way, if you use the Django form, instead of, building this whole HTML yourself and making sure that, okay, this is required, Django took care of that. So if I want to submit that one, the HTML itself generated by Django tells me, hey, you have to fill it out. So front end is blocking me from making a mistake to send it to backend, which would say, hey, you didn't give me value. That's invalid. I have to give you an error. But front end stops me because Django is so great that builds it for me. But let's say this is a little bit more complicated and you added some additional fields that you need to validate. And let's say in your form, so let's go to our form. Again, I can do command and click and get to our form, and I prepared this. Let's say our logic did not hold. So let's say it returns false, and in here I just hard coded it just to show you that, let's simulate something went wrong. And let's go back here and try to put something in here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 9, 9, and let's add the date, type, whatever, submit. Form was not valid. Okay, so, and this is how I got this message displayed. I went to form invalid and I said, hey, if it's invalid, do this. Obviously, you can add so much more code in here. You can maybe have some logging system that will send that to whatever log, or maybe an alert system where you send an email to someone saying, hey, someone is trying to send something invalid, whatever. This is I'm just showing you that you can catch that moment. All of those methods catch a certain moment of the whole process, right? So I was looking at get, so this is where you get the page. I was looking at the post page a bit. We're looking at extra context and get extra context. That's also a certain moment in the life circle. So it's good to know that you have pretty much the full control and you have so many options. Like you can do a lot of things in one place, but also if you want to be more granular, you can say, hey, I just want to like, just whenever the form is valid, I want to say something, I want to do something. Or if it's invalid, I want to do something. Okay, so let me just go back to my form and get rid of this code because I don't want to mess around. And by the way, we'll look at the forms as well in the future. Maybe next video will be about that. But let's get back to our create class. Okay, so for now I'm gonna delete that. You can comment it out. I'm gonna delete that. Success URL, we did have that. So basically, whatever happens here is like, you know, this is an equivalent of this without superpowers. So we can't put that message in here. In, you know, just specifying an attribute won't allow us to add some logic again, and also we can't tap into self if you want to. So I'm using this because I want to say, hey, income created successfully, right? If I now go and try to submit, income created successfully, right? And why did I succeed? Because I changed that form. I took out the is valid false, and now it's true. Everything is okay. Okay, so let me just tidy up. I think that's, you know, that's all you might want to know. I think this is also something I can just get rid of. I'll put that in here. Template name, of course, that is not necessary because this is a default value, so I can just leave it as is. Let me just maybe pull it like this. Okay, so these are some things that we might just go back to, so I'll leave it commented out. This is what I want to just leave for now. Right, so let's go to income update view. So update view is very similar, but it handles also the, you know, query sets, because now we care what kind of data we can access, what kind of data we can change. You know, if you create something new, well, you create something new, so you can't harm anything that already exists. You can only add something. In here, we want to make sure that nobody has an access to, you know, something that they shouldn't have an access to. So for example, let's go from the top, model income form. So that's exactly the same. We did have a look at this before. So if I go to, let me reload and go to update. And so we have our nice form. If I added my, hey, give me the default, now we have this default form. So it works exactly the same as with the CreateView. In here we specify the class, in here we put some logic and then specify the class. And if you want to go with the default, that's the default. We need to specify the fields. Okay, so I'm going to delete this, uncomment jish, because we need to say what is the class. Template name, again, same story. This is the name, so that's the default name. That comes from the app name, that comes from the model name, that comes from just the default form. If we change that to form 2, it's not going to work. So let's go here and refresh. Income form 2 doesn't exist, but if I completely comment it out and then again refresh, it's back on because the default is indeed income form. Okay, so I'll just leave that as default and leave it here. If we want to change the suffix, so instead of having just form, we want to have not create with update form. Again, that's not going to work because we don't have something called income update form. We would have to change it. So let's comment it out. And by the way, if you want to change the structure of your templates, that's where you do it. You put that template name here, and maybe you don't want to keep it in My Finances. Maybe you want to keep it in apps/My Finances/income form. But then you have to create it in here. You have to open this and do new folder apps, and then in apps you have to have My Finances, and then in My Finances you have to have this file. Okay. But it's good to stick to defaults because it just makes your life easier. Okay, query set. So that's the difference between the create and update. In here we care and we need to make sure that, you know, the user has an access only to the stuff that we want them to have an access to. So let's have a look here. Let me go back to the list and let's say 24. Okay, so let's say 24 is forbidden and let's change that to 24. So whatever that is, we're not gonna get 24. Let's go back here, refresh 24, and I'm still getting somewhere. And that's because, so 24 is here. So you would think like, okay, I'm accessing 24. No, I did something here. So let's just talk about get query set and get object at the same time. So I am getting this query set that is excluding 24, and I'm not using PK. In here, I'm not looking at whatever, you know, I'm in 24, so I should be looking for 24 in here. But what I'm doing is actually, I'm like, give me the first item from this query set. I don't care what it is. So that's why I'm actually looking 1, 2, 3. Let's go back and see what is 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 is indeed the first item here. Okay, 14 of April, 14 of April, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I'm looking at the first item. Obviously, that is not a good idea. So let me delete this. But that's how you get the object. That's where you specify what is being handed back, basically. This data from here, when I get here, update, this data here, and whatever is getting updated, let me just change it to like 0, 0, 0, 0, submit. Oh, it's not, oh, too many digits, okay. Let's go back to the list. Indeed, I changed the first one. So it's kind of weird. I don't know why would you want to mess with that, but maybe you have an idea where you actually want to give something else. That's where you do it. Let me just get rid of that and see what's going to happen if I have this query set that excludes 24, and although the front end and list items doesn't exclude it, so list view doesn't exclude 24, so I'm going to see it here. Let me refresh. I can see it here. I'm going in and I'm trying to update, and it doesn't allow me because it's not in the query set. Okay, if I took that out, so that's like a couple of levels of security. Obviously, you should make sure that whenever someone is listing items, you also don't want to see the ID of 24, and then it's in sync. But it's nice to have a couple of ways of making sure that somebody doesn't have an access to something you don't want them to have an access to. 23, 25, 24 is not here because it's not in the list. Let's say I made a mistake. I forgot about this. I allowed someone to see 24, and then I try to update it. I can't. And that's another level of security. Okay, let's go back here. So obviously we are not using this. Okay, so context object name, income, again, the same story. If you want to use this, whatever object is being sent back to this, sorry, let's go to our income form. So if you want to do something like, I don't know, h1 with like income dot ID, I'll just say here, ID is whatever, income. Okay, refresh, and ID is 24. So if you want to add some information saying, hey, that's the ID, or there's something else, like maybe the user of this income, so you can add that there. And to access income, as I said before, with the detail view, and they are using the same ancestors. So there's a lot of functionality that you'll see that behaves exactly the same. So if I change that to object, and although in the views, I specified that I want it to be called income, and either here or here, I will do the same. Let me refresh, and I still see 24. Refresh, it's still using, you know, I'm using object ID. It's still there because I can use both object and the whatever I set in here. If I didn't set it, it would be income because that's the name of the model. I can override it with something dupa, and let's. If I tried income and refresh now, it's not there because now it's dupa. I need to change it to dupa. Okay, I know what's happening. Obviously, if I use dupa in here, it's gonna clash with this dupa here, which is a context that overwrites my main context, which is not a good idea. So I'm gonna change that to say Maruño and use that in my form. Now refresh, and that's back in. Okay, so whatever we set there can be used to show some information about the object that we are editing, we're updating. So just okay, and by default it's income. Extra context, again, we can pass the dictionary with extra context, or we can calculate some stuff and add it to the context. So that's that. And you could see that in here. No, you can't see that because I deleted the HTML to show the context, but you saw it with CreateView. Okay, get, again, exactly the same. Get and post, same story. So you can do some calculation when you get the form, and then you can do something when you post the form, and you can catch that moment with get and post. And that's the syntax that you want to use. You do want to super it at the end because you probably don't want to write the whole logic of handling the whole get request, but you probably want to add something at the end, in between. So that's that. Form valid, again, the same story. If the form for some reason doesn't pass the validation, then we can swoop in and say, hey, something, and then again, we can super it, and we can just do the same with the invalid. And if you want to see the examples of it, go back to CreateView, where I'm playing a bit with this form valid stuff. Okay. Success URL, that's something that we looked at before. And in here, I was talking about reverse lazy, which is like going to a simple URL with no PK, no nothing. If you want to go back to a place that requires PK, we need to use reverse, and we need to pass some quirks. So like, for example, we wouldn't be able to pass that in here into just an attribute because we don't have an access to self in the attribute. Okay, and in between we also can add the message. Okay, so I'll delete this actually because we don't need that, and that's done for UpdateView. So there was a little bit more, and that's very similar when it comes to DeleteView. In DeleteView we have one more method. So we get the confirmation form, and then we post that form, and then we delete the asset in a database. So let's see, I put those messages in here. So let's see if I can delete something. And by the way, you'll see something wacky, because if you look in here, we have this funny, 123000, and I'm going to try to delete 24, and I'm going to try to delete it. And then, okay, yeah. So you can see I'm get method. So it got this form, and now I want to see like, hey, will you delete it? Yeah, I posted that, and then I deleted that, and that was deleted successfully. And I got those messages from post, from delete, and also from get success URL. Okay, that's what it went through, and that's where the messages came from. Okay, but look what happened. I deleted the first one, and you'll see in a second why. Okay, so let me just get rid of those. So again, these are the methods that are, so I'm using the word method. It has two meanings in here. One is method of this class, right? So delete is a method, and post and get query set and so on. Then we have HTTP methods, and there are get method and post method and delete method and put and header, and there's a couple of other. And in here we have kind of like one-to-one, even with naming. This delete is handling this method, DeleteView method called delete is handling the delete method HTTP method, okay? And this is where you put your code if you want to kind of intercept that moment and add something from you. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of this. Template, the same story. Go back to the CreateView if you wanna see playing around with this. But basically, this is how you specify the template name, and this is how you specify the suffix. So if you want to just like change the back of it, this is the model name, so that comes by default. And then if you just want to change this, that part here, you put it in here, template name suffix. Okay, that's the default. Put that here. Query set, again, like if you want to make sure that somebody doesn't have an access to 23, then, or some group of items, we want to exclude them or filter by something that will exclude them, then that way this is not available. And then again, this is why we deleted the first one, right? This is exactly the same story as with the UpdateView. I just wanted to show you that you can get another object if you want, if there is any need for that, or maybe you want to just like catch that moment when we get that object, and again check if that object is available for the user that is trying to get it, and then you return it. Okay, so let me just get rid of this and go back to get query set. So we have 23 in here that is excluded. So let me try to delete 23. I'm in 23. I try to delete it, and it says sorry, but I couldn't find it because I didn't allow it to be found. If I delete this exclude from here, refresh, and now I'm able to delete it. So again, like we have different levels of security. You can check it, make sure that queryset excludes the stuff that you're trying to delete. And then, you know, as you get the object, you also say, hey, this is an object that you're not supposed to be touching. And then in the list view, also make sure that that user doesn't see it. But then when you go here, if you don't see it, you can still put that in your URL, and that should be also flagged that, sorry, you're not allowed to see this item. And obviously, like, this is the good place where you say, hey, you know, graciously try to redirect somewhere. So if the query wasn't found, then, you know, take me to the page that says, sorry, you don't have an access to that item. And that's where, you know, we can put it, let's say, to get object or something. Then we have get context object name. Again, the same story as with DetailView or UpdateView. So go back in there and check it out. But basically, this is where we change the default income to whatever you want. So we have access to object always. Then you have, by default, is the name of the model. And then if you want to change it to something else, you can change it to something else if you want. Okay, extra context, nice stuff. You add some context by simply just adding that to the extra context field, or you can add it like this. So you can add, so you get the super, whatever context is being calculated, and then you can add some, or you can change some if you want. Like if you put a breakpoint here, you can actually have a look and see what's happening in there. And that's quite a lot of data you are looking at there, because you have this object there, or income, this is the same thing. And maybe you want to change or add some stuff to them. So that's where you would do it. And that's why, by the way, we have Blada, we have rules. That's why we see those. So let me now fix it. I don't want to see it anymore. I still want to see the word dupa in my code because it's a cool name. You should Google it. And let me just go to confirm delete, and I don't want that here. Okay. So now we have get success URL. So that's the stuff that we put in here before. That's something that tells Django where to go after we successfully delete the item. It's the same for create, it's the same for update. We can either say success URL in here and put something lazy there, so it doesn't require accessing self. But if you want to access self there, we have to use the get success URL. And by the way, you can't have both of them. Like, you know, either of them has to be, or maybe not. Let's see. One will override the other one. Okay, let me just confirm. Deleted successfully. So delete. Okay, so I am getting, because I am doing this message thing, I am getting that this is not working. So that's the answer. Okay, so we looked a little bit in depth at CreateView, UpdateView, DeleteView, so all the editing views. I hope that you can see now that you have pretty much the full power, full control over those views. It's not that because we went from function-based views to class-based views, now everything is like up to Django, and whatever we want to do, we have to follow this very specific pattern. No. So there are two things. One, I really recommend sticking to defaults as long as you can, so you don't have to add any more code and you don't have to remember whatever you came up with. Django has the ways that it works, and once you memorize those ways, memorize those rules, a couple of rules really, then you can use, you know, for example, this object context name, or income if it's the name of the model, or if it's the, you know, if it's the delete view, then obviously it's going to be the model name, then confirm delete HTML that you have to create in the folder called My Finances, which is the name of the app, and so on. So there's some just defaults that make sense, and I really recommend sticking to them. But if you don't like it, if you want to change something, maybe some wording is not really good, or if you want to add some additional functionality, you're free to do it wherever you want. It's even more than function-based, because function-based, if you want to split it into different like kind of components, it becomes messy. In here, like, hey, I want to catch the moment where the form is valid, and I don't want to put like huge amount of code. I just want to catch that moment. It's so easy. I want to catch the moment where I'm using the get request. You just do the define get and overwrite that. So for the beginners, yes, it is kind of overwhelming because object-oriented programming is just a concept that needs a bit of time to wrap your head around it. So if you're not very familiar or comfortable with that, that's fine. That's how I started. I was also overwhelmed by this new concept of class-based things and you know, why can't I just like write a function and it worked before, why would I go anywhere else? Obviously, with practice, it goes away. You're like, I get it now. I like it more. I like it how organized and how little code I have to write. It's so repetitive at some point that I don't want to write it over and over again or copy any stuff. You know, at some point, you're very conscious about being dry as well. So you don't want to like write code that is copy paste. You want to keep your code dry. And at the beginning, don't worry about it, copy and paste and, you know, kind of experiment, but at some point you want to go like, yeah, okay, I can see that I'm copying and pasting, and that's a bad thing. Always keep at the back of your head that copying and pasting is a bad thing, and then in the future find ways to stop doing it. Okay, so I think I was blabbering for long enough. Thanks for watching this. So I think we're at this place where we can continue with the app, so build it and fully make it work. Before that, I want to have the user working. So I don't want to go back and forth. I want to have everything that we need for this app. So I suppose we can have a quick look at the forms because they are pretty good to know with all the validation and stuff. Then I want to look at authentication because we need the users that we connect with the income, outcome, and balance, and then filter by user. So it's all just like, you know, if you have 10 users, only, you know, each user can have an access to only their own finances. Okay, cool. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.